Back in 1980, the early part of May, suddenly a Bible appeared before my eyes. I didn't understand that at all. But since that Bible appeared before my eyes, and I had been studying up to 14 hours a day many times because I ran my own business and I had the opportunity to do so, after about 2 months, I laid the manuscript down on the desk to start Newswatch magazine. The Bible disappeared. I knew that God had called me into the ministry. And then later on, 4 men laid hands on me and ordained me officially into the ministry, just like Paul had hands laid upon him. The 4th man prayed to set me aside for the ministry of prophecy. That has happened ever since. And so this ministry, you could say, is a ministry of prophecy. But for those that are called through it, they must be taught also the more spiritual side of the Bible. So today I'm going to continue on a prophetic message that I began. This will be part 2 of Will the Real Barack Obama Stand Up? Many times people just don't understand Bible prophecy because they have never been taught that the 12 tribes of Israel were divided after Solomon's death. They were divided into the 10 northern tribes of the house of Israel and into the 2 southern tribes of the house of Judah. There is a differentiation in the Bible between the two in prophetic utterances. King Solomon was given much wealth because he asked for wisdom to rule the kingdom instead of material goods. As time raced by, though, he began to turn his head in other directions than God. He accumulated 1,000 women to himself of all nationalities from around the world. The most beautiful women, but many of them, most of them, worshiped idols. When you read 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 8 to 12, this is what God said. Likewise did he for all his strange or foreign wives, which burnt incense and sacrificed unto their gods. And the Lord was angry with Solomon, because his heart was turned from the Lord God of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice. And he commanded him concerning this thing, yes, this thing of idolatry and allowing his wives access to offering sacrifices to demons in the very temple of God, that he should not go after other gods. But he kept not that which the Lord commanded. Wherefore, or because he continued in this sin, the Lord said unto Solomon, For as much as this is done of you, and you have not kept my covenant and my statutes, which I've commanded you, I will surely rend or tear the kingdom from you, and will give it to your servant. Notwithstanding in your days I will not do it for David your father's sake. But I will rend or tear away the kingdom out of the hand of your son, and his name was Rehoboam. Now God caused a division, according to 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 15, and it was from him. Judah was going to forcibly bring back the northern 10 tribes of Israel by the military into the kingdom. But when you drop down to chapter 12 of 1 Kings, verse 24, it says, Thus says the Lord, you shall not go up, nor fight against your brethren, the children of Israel. Return every man to his house, for this thing is from me. They listened to the word of the Lord. So there was a secession from the union. There were 10 tribes that separated from the 2. Now, if you have a Bible with maps in the front of it, a more expensive Bible, it'll show the northern 10 tribes and the southern 2 tribes. They'll be called the house of Israel in the north and the house of Judah in the south. Now, the house of Israel never once had a king or a leader that obeyed God. Never once. So God brought Assyria to conquer them in 721 to 718 BC. They were scattered. They migrated and went across the Caucasus Mountains between the Black and the Caspian Sea, dwelled there for a while, and became known as Caucasians. Then they migrated westward, and they settled in Western Europe, Britain, Ireland, Scotland, and later on migrated to the United States of America. This is the modern-day lost tribes of the house of Israel. And then you had Judah. They are totally separate. They're nicknamed Jews today, and most people believe that they are the only Israelites on the face of the earth because God said He would scatter the house of Israel and they would disappear from history. But at the end time, it would be made known who they were. And there were many people who adopted the religion of Judaism, and they claim to be Jews today also. Now notice what the prophet Daniel was told in chapter 12, verse 4, and the last part of verse 7. But you, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, that's world travel, and knowledge shall be increased. Now notice the last part of verse 7. That it shall be for a time, that's 1 year, times, plural, that's 2 years, and a half, that's a half year, a total of 3½ years. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. Incredible advances have come in our day in the fields of electronics and so on. That's just one example of the increase in knowledge that has taken place. Are we in the end times? You bet we are. Can we be looking forward to the time when the scattering of the holy people will take place? Yes, it will not be pleasant, but it is going to happen. The holy people are Israel, according to the Bible. So you have little tiny Judah in the Middle East, and then proselytes, even though there's more Jews, literal, the bloodline of Judah in New York City than there is in all of Israel in the Middle East. Then you have the lost 10 tribes of Israel. Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, part of Germany, Denmark, the Low Countries, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Holland, Ireland, Scotland, Britain, the United States, Canada, Australia, the Union of South Africa. These are called the holy people because they are descended from the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, those working for world government can now number every one and put them into a computer system for instant transfer of funds. No cash will be needed, no coins, no checks. Without taking what Revelation 13:16 to 18 says is the mark of the beast on your right hand or forehead, you can't buy or sell. You'll become a vagabond in the earth unless you have protection from Jesus Christ and His angels. Now, with all this in mind as an introduction, let's continue into the next phase of the message before I get to, will the real Barack Obama stand up? 2 top Illuminati agents in the 1870s and in the 1880s were Albert Pike of Little Rock, Arkansas. Also, Giuseppe Mazzini was head of the military arm. He was from Italy. They completed the plan for the final destruction of the Western world of Christianity and a future nation state they were going to bring into being called international communism. They were to overthrow Russia and establish a seen enemy of the Western world. This would result in the New World Order of Luciferian control over the whole world when they brought those two into conflict and destroyed both of them at the same time. Now, the plan called for 3 world wars and many revolutionary wars. Out of the First World War came Russian communism, the seen enemy of the Western world of Christianity. Out of the Second World War came the United Nations, a front for a world government. And then also China and smaller nations were being overthrown for communism. The strategy was they would take, as V.I. Lenin said, first take Eastern Europe. They did it as satellite countries, as a buffer between the rest of Europe and Russia. Secondly, they would take the masses of Asia. So Mao Zedong led the overthrow of China. Lastly, after their revolutionary wars, overthrew many countries in Africa, South and Central America, and Cuba, right off 90 miles off the coast of Key West, Florida. The United States was to fall because they would be infiltrating from within. And then they even had a strategy in case it did not fall, they would take it by the military. The United States today is bogged down in war in Iraq and Afghanistan. On the home front, however, Barack Obama is running for the presidency of the United States. He is the least known candidate to ever run for that office. He went on his tour to war zones in Iraq and Afghanistan and allied nations as well, such as Israel and Germany. He stated that Israel is an enemy of America before he became a senator. Yet he spoke in Israel about protecting them from their enemies if he became president of the United States. Why would he say something the opposite of what he'd said before? And it's public record. He continued in Germany with his speeches. He stood on the very spot where the occult leader of Germany during World War II, Adolf Hitler, delivered his speeches. He delivered a message that thrilled the German people. He spoke of world citizenship, world government, even used the phrase, the New World Order, and that he would confiscate all guns in America and prevent the manufacture of guns and ammunition. However, he has not told the American people that he would destroy the Second Amendment, guaranteeing us the right to own guns.
The Obama campaign, meantime, is taking a shot at what might appear to be an unlikely constituency in Pennsylvania, gun owners. The Politico newspaper reports Obama is trying to highlight his background in constitutional law and downplay his record of voting consistently, his voting record of consistently supporting gun control. Obama has voted for bans on semi-automatic weapons and concealed weapons and voted for limits on handgun purchases.
Charlie Gibson raising the issue of gun control with Obama last night, specifically whether he favors a ban on handguns.
In 1996, your campaign issued a questionnaire, and your writing was on the questionnaire that said you favored a ban on handguns.
No, my writing wasn't on that particular questionnaire, Charlie.
Well, That's an Obama misstatement. His handwriting does appear on a questionnaire. Here's the survey in question. The Obama camp did not deny that that is Obama's handwriting. And the answer is yes to the question, do you support legislation to ban the manufacture, sale, and possession of handguns? Now, the Obama camp claims the answers provided in the survey don't reflect his current views. But why doesn't he say that?
The right to bear arms is one of the fundamental ideals on which our nation was founded. Hard-working, law-abiding Americans have for generations enjoyed this freedom in their communities and with their families. But Barack Obama believes that many Americans simply cling to guns in times of economic distress. Speaking behind closed doors to an audience of San Francisco donors, Barack Obama said they cling to guns or religion as a way to explain their frustrations. Obama's anti-gun record is long. In 2004, he voted against legislation drafted to protect homeowners from prosecution in cases where they used a firearm to halt a home invasion. In 2003, he voted in support of legislation that would have effectively banned most of the privately held hunting shotguns, target rifles, and black powder rifles in Illinois. And in 1996, Obama supported a ban on the manufacture, sale, and possession of handguns. But now, Obama's running for president and claims no knowledge of this, even though his handwriting is all over it.
When was he planning to do that? Was he planning to do it after the elections? If the elections come off? Albert Pike, Giuseppe Mazzini, V.I. Lenin, and Barack Obama are not the only ones who have called for the destruction of the greatest power that has ever existed. It was prophesied in the pages of the Bible that the United States and Great Britain would become the greatest nations on the face of the earth in the last days. A company of nations, Great Britain, and a single great nation. Iran's president blamed the United States and other big powers for nuclear proliferation, for the AIDS epidemic, and other global ills, and accused them of exploiting the United Nations organization and other organizations for their own gain. And the developing world would be the losers. Of course, Iran has been building their own nuclear weapons, even though they say that it's to provide electricity for their people, to help better the lives of those individuals. But the president of Iran said time was on the poor country's side. To be exact, he said, and I'm quoting, "The big powers are going down. They have come to the end of their power, and the world is on the verge of entering a new promising era." End of quote. There are more than 100 member nations that have joined a non-aligned movement. They're not for the United States, they're not for Russia. It's made up of different members such as Communist Cuba, Jamaica, India, and they depict themselves as bloc-free nations. Most of the members are critical of the United States of America and the developed world in general. That means Western Europe. The non-aligned movement of nations released to the Associated Press a statement that reflected their struggle. Quote, "The rich and powerful countries continue to exercise an inordinate influence in determining the nature and direction of international relations, including economic and trade relations, as well as rules governing these relations, many of which are at the expense of developing countries." End of quote. These countries said that they were against certain states that would impose by force upon them coercive measures, actions that they did not want inside of their borders. so that these larger, more powerful nations could achieve their national policy objectives. Now remember, this is 100 countries that have now developed out of this. This statement was a direct slap in the face to the United States of America and to Russia. The United States has had mercenary Blackwater troops in the little tiny country of Georgia for some time. That country borders Russia.
South Ossetian President's envoy Dmitry Medvedev calls Georgia's military actions the ultimate villainy. He says the Georgian army is possibly reinforced by mercenaries, as foreigners have been found among their bodies.
This nation is right now fighting for its survival, but we are also fighting for world peace, and we are also fighting for future world order. What is at stake here is world order, and what is at stake here are basic principles of international law. But the point here is, it's not about me, it's about the idea of freedom. It's about the future of the whole region. It's about the future of Europe and a new world order.
Georgia wanted to be a free country with elected officials. They did so. They became what they called a democratic country instead of a communist country. But Russia saw things differently. Russia was called upon by the Group of Seven, better known as G7, industrial powers for a ceasefire. But to no avail, Russia moved in, set up their positions to take back the little country of Georgia. The major reason for the Russian invasion is because of a major pipeline that is being threatened that carries oil from Russia right on into Eastern Europe. It has alarmed investors in Russia and has raised fears of a wider, more volatile region where war could break out surrounding Iran, Turkey, and Russia. Moscow said it would not compromise. We're seeing the two most powerful players on the world scene having political problems right now. The very ones that are talked about in one spot in the Bible as having a confrontation in the last days. The United States is in war in Iraq and has plans to move in on Iran, possibly before Bush leaves office. The United States has troops in Georgia, mercenary troops. Russia has invaded Georgia to secure its oil pipeline for its investors, economics. Iran and Russia supposedly have agreements in case of war. One will come to the other's aid. They could possibly come to each other's mutual aid in case war were to break out. Now, this is all very interesting because could this be the beginning, the setting the stage for this Third World War that was talked about in 1871? By Albert Pike and Giuseppe Mazzini, worshipers of Lucifer or Satan the devil. The Illuminati said they needed, in order to bring about this world government, this Third World War. This would leave the United States, if we're bogged down over in the Middle East in a war with Iran, to be run over by Communist China, who is to our west, who has military troops at both ends of the Panama Canal, and other communist nations combined with them. Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 1 to 12, I'll not go into the whole thing, but at least in one verse, I think it's verse 5, that it says Persia will be joined with them against the United States of America, the house of Israel. Who is modern day Persian? Iran. Take a map of old Persia and lay it down, and it's Iran. And if the United States moves in on Iran, and Russia now has a pact with them Could the beginning of World War III be right before us very, very soon? So the question becomes, who is this politician named Barack Hussein Obama, who might become the President of the United States, which happens to be part of the 10 lost tribes of Israel? Why would he give speeches in foreign countries rather than in the United States, such as Germany, where they called him the future Messiah? Why did Muslim leader of the Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan, stand before thousands and state that Obama was to be their Messiah? And I'm quoting, the stone that was rejected by the builders, who would now become the capstone, end of his quote.
You are the instruments that God is going to use to bring about universal change. And that is why Barack has captured the youth. And he has involved young people in a political process that they didn't care anything about. That's a sign. When the Messiah speaks, the youth will hear. And the Messiah is absolutely speaking. Would God allow Barack to be president of a country that has been so racist, so evil in its mistreatment of Hispanics, Native Americans, Indians, blacks? Would God do something like that? Yeah. Of course he would. That's to show you that the stone that the builders have rejected is becoming the headstone of the corner. This is a sign to you.
We know that is a Bible scripture talking about Jesus Christ, but they're using it for Obama. Who is Farrakhan? He heads up the Nation of Islam. One man who is an expert on Islam says nobody names their son Hussein unless he is Islamic. Are we about to have an Islamic President of the United States? Could he be the one that would step in, prevent the manufacture of guns and ammunition, and confiscate America's guns as he said in Germany? Why didn't he tell us these things? Why did he tell the German people that there would be a new world order, but he didn't tell the American people? Will Obama help facilitate the coming economic crash to destroy America? And more importantly, why has the mass media not told the American people any of these things? Let's investigate just a little further. Here is a statement. Came from CBN News. Barack Obama made this statement with pride. Quote, "We are no longer a Christian nation. We are now a nation of Christians, Jews, Muslims, and Buddhists."
Whatever we once were, we are no longer a Christian nation, at least not just. We are also a Jewish nation, and a Muslim nation, and a Buddhist nation, and a Hindu nation, and a nation of non-believers.
As with so many other statements I've heard him make, and this was from the telecast, I never thought I'd see the day that I'd hear something that like that from a presidential candidate in this nation. To think our forefathers fought and died for the right for the nation to be a Christian nation. And to have this man say with pride that we are no longer a Christian nation. How far this nation has come from what our founding fathers intended it to be. Ronald Reagan said, and I quote, "If we ever forget we are one nation under God, we will be a nation gone under." End of quote. Now let's go into some of the background of this presidential candidate who seems to have the Democratic Party, its nomination for the presidency, locked up. There was a man by the name of Carl Davidson that Barack Obama knows quite well. He was a key supporter of Obama's 1996 Senate in Illinois run. Carl Davidson, don't forget that name. He's a Marxist who in the 1960s had been a national secretary of the Students for a Democratic Society, which was a Communist Front organization. He was a national leader of the anti-Vietnam War movement led by the communists. In 1969, Davidson, along with Tom Hayden, remember, who was married to Jane Fonda, Hanoi Jane, sitting in a North Vietnamese tank with a helmet on, cheering on the North Vietnam or Vietnamese military. They helped to begin what is called the brigades. These brigades were covertly transferred and transported by airlift hundreds of young Americans to Cuba to help harvest sugar cane and interact with Havana's communist revolutionary leadership. The brigades were organized by Fidel Castro's Cuban intelligence agencies, which trained the Batistas in guerrilla warfare. Also the use of arms and explosives. Now, this man Davidson helped to transport them to Cuba. Carl Davidson is an American Marxist who served as a National Steering Committee member of the United for Peace and Justice organization that was co-chaired with pro-Castro socialist Leslie Kagan. Now, Davidson also co-chaired the group called Chicagoans Against War and Injustice. It formed alliances with such organizations as the League of Women Voters, which was a Communist Front organization, Rainbow Push by Jesse Jackson, identified by the FBI as a Communist Front organization, Citizen Action Organization, People for the American Way, all identified by FBI agents as Communist Front organization. The Progressive Caucus, the word progressive is always used by socialist communists as a cover for the word socialism. He was affiliated with the Congressional Black Caucus, identified by the FBI as a Communist Front organization, and the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. All of their objectives, all of these organizations, their aim was to transform the United States of America into a socialistic nation. Davidson advocated the mobilization of new grassroots majorities required for progressive, systematic change. Remember that word change, because that's exactly what Obama keeps saying over and over. He is for change. But he doesn't tell us what kind of change that will be. Are we beginning to get the point that I'm making? We will be changed to complete socialism, communism, or, if the international bankers want it, fascism. In 1988, Davidson founded the Networking for Democracy, a program which encouraged high school students to engage in mass action aimed at tearing down, and I'm quoting, the old structures of race and class privilege, end of quote, around the world. Remember, Franklin Delano Roosevelt hired men back in the 1930s to socialize America. They substituted the word democracy and said it would hide the true meaning of socialism from the American people. In 1992, Davidson became leader of the newly formed Committee of Correspondence, which was made up of a Marxist coalition of former Maoist, followers of Communist China's Mao, Trotskyites of Russia, and members of the Communist Party USA. In the mid-1990s, Davidson was a major player in the Chicago branch of the Marxist political coalition known as the New Party, whose endorsement Barack Obama actively sought when he was running for the state senatorship in Illinois. Obama, in 1996, his Senate campaign secured the endorsement of the Democratic Socialists of America. This happened to be the largest socialist organization in the United States and the principal U.S. affiliate of the Socialist International. Obama sought and received their endorsement. His affiliation with this Democratic Socialists of America has been long-standing. Evidence is that in his book, Dreams from My Father, he pointed out that as a student at Columbia University, he, and I'm quoting, went to socialist conferences at Cooper Union, end of quote. Cooper Union was a privately funded college for the advancement of science and art. But it was used from the early 1980s till 2004. It served as the place where the meetings were held by the Socialist Scholars Conference. According to Trevor Loudon, who happens to be a writer, guest speakers at these conferences included members of the Communist Party USA, many of its offshoot organizations, the Committee of Correspondence, as well as Maoists, Trotskyites, black radicals, gay activists, and radical feminists. Now, Obama attended many conferences during his years at Columbia. It was his choice to go to these conferences. In 1998, Obama became a board member of the Chicago-based Joyce Foundation. It's dedicated to radical environmentalism, social justice, all socialist communist terms, prison reform, and increased government funding for social services for minorities. Pure socialism. Now, this is what Barack Obama has been doing in the past before he became a candidate for the United States presidency. No wonder he's the least known of all presidents. If the American people knew all this, he wouldn't get not one vote outside the Communist or Socialist Party. Obama remained a board member for 3 years of this Joyce Foundation, which made grants to such communist socialist front organizations as the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law, then the Children's Defense Fund of Ohio, the Jane Addams Resource Corporation, all identified by the FBI as Communist Front organizations, the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, the World Wildlife Fund, the National Wildlife Federation, the Sierra Club Foundation, the National Resources Defense Council, the Isaac Walton League of America, the Rockefeller Family Fund, and many, many, many other Communist Front organizations. Grants were given to all of them with his approval. In 2000, Obama ran against former Black Panther incumbent Congressman Bobby Rush in the Democratic primary for the United States House of Representatives. Rush denounced Obama as an elitist who wasn't, and I can't apologize for his statement, but this is what he said, who wasn't black enough. He meant that he had the elitist background, socialist, white background, not black enough to represent the black community. Rush crushed Obama by a 2-to-1 vote margin. And so Obama returned to the Illinois Senate, and his 4-year term continued. But he also befriended someone else. During the years when Obama was a lecturer at the University of Chicago Law School, he became very friendly with Rashid Khalidi, a professor of Near Eastern languages and civilizations. Obama's radicalism seemed to have become stronger from this relationship. The Los Angeles Times of April 10th, 2008, has reported that Obama had been a friend and frequent dinner companion of Rashid Khalidi, who was a Palestinian American and former Palestinian Liberation Organization spokesman. That's the PLO. The PLO was joined by communist Yasser Arafat and led it. Arafat was a terrorist against Israel. Khalidi is the Edward Said Professor of Arab Studies at Columbia University. Syed, who died in 2003, was a fierce critic of the nation of Israel in the Middle East. He was a close associate of the now dead PLO leader Yasser Arafat. Khalidi held a fundraiser for Obama's congressional bid in 2000. He's also a co-founder of the Arab American Action Network, a group that provides social services to Arab Americans in Chicago. His wife, Mona, was the co-founder. And this Arab American Network, Action Network, also contended that Arab Americans faced wide discrimination in the United States. They also held the view that Israel's creation in 1948 was a catastrophe for Arab people. In 2001 and 2002, while Barack Obama served on the board of the Woods Fund in Chicago, they made grants totaling $75,000 to this Arab network, which had direct ties to the terrorist organization Palestinian Liberation Organization. According to journalist John Batchelor, the vice president of this Arab American Action Network, Ali Abunamah, of Electronic Intifad, that's his company, has remembered that Barack Obama spoke out in 1999 against Israeli occupation at a charity event on the West Bank refugee camp. This vice president of the Electronic Intifad has also remembered Mr. and Mrs. Obama at a fundraiser held for a congressman at the Rashid home, where Mr. Obama made very convincing statements in support of the Palestinian terrorist cause. Now, this is all interesting because this is the man that could possibly be the next president of the United States. We saw in Daniel 12, verse 7, there's going to be a scattering of the holy people. What if he is Muslim? What if he is elected? What if they do start their war against Christianity and persecution of Christians, as the fifth seal of the book of Revelation says? Would that lead to a scattering of the power of the holy people when foreigners have now taken over our nation? Isn't it strange that in Obama's July 2008 visit to Israel, that he spoke for the defense of Israel? Is it true that politicians will say anything, even lies, to get elected? Now, that's what Saul Alinsky taught, and Obama was trained in Saul Alinsky foundations to be a secret infiltrator to destroy the government from within. Shortly after Obama's unsuccessful run for Congress in the year 2000, he was deeply in debt. He had little cash at his disposal. He had a stagnant law practice because he had neglected it during the campaigning period. In early 2001, a longtime powerful political supporter, Chicago businessman Robert Blackwell Jr., hired Obama to provide legal advice for his growing technology firm, Electronic Knowledge Interchange. In exchange for Obama's services, Blackwell paid him $8,000 a month as a retaining fee for 14 straight months. That's $118,000. In return for these payments to Obama, Obama put pressure on the Illinois State Tourism Bureau to send a $50,000 grant to Mr. Blackwell's business. He also issued a formal written request for Illinois officials to furnish a $50,000 tourism promotion grant to his business. His business that he wanted to promote was Killer Spin. That particular business sells apparel for racket or for table tennis. They wanted to hold tournaments in Illinois, and the state sponsored it. Killer Spin received not the full $50,000 the first year. It received $20,000. But over the next couple of years, it received $320,000 because of Obama's pressure that he put on the committees. And so in the year 2002 and 2004, they received that kind of money. Here's what one man wrote concerning this particular transfer of funds. First, Blackwell to Obama, then Obama putting pressure on the state of Illinois? Quote, "This looks like a rather obvious quid pro quo. In exchange for $118,000 in salary, Blackwell received $320,000 in state taxpayer money and influence at the highest level of state politics." End of quote. Will there be change when Mr. Obama takes over? Yes, there will. There won't be corruptible change. That corruption will keep going, but it will be to socialism. Mr. Blackwell, on his website in 2008, said he was committed to raising between $100,000 and $200,000 for Obama's run on the White House. And he's doing his job well. Obama was very outspoken as an opponent to the Iraqi war, even before it was even first discussed openly that we were going into Iraq to unseat Saddam Hussein. On October 2nd, 2002, Obama gave an anti-war speech alongside of Jesse Jackson. Now you have to understand who Jesse Jackson was and even is today. He was trained with Dr. Martin Luther King by the same set of communists. And so Mr. Jesse Jackson is socialist 100%. But they delivered their message on the same day that President Bush and Congress had agreed on a joint resolution to use force against Iraq. Jesse Jackson was taught by the same group of communists that Dr. King was. Now remember, King sat in the Communist Party meeting at Mount Eagle, Tennessee, sitting right next to Communist Party leader William Z. Foster. That's where he was trained in the production of Molotov cocktails, so that every time he gave an inflammatory speech, there would be those who were in the audience of the crowd, and they would start by throwing Molotov cocktails and beginning fires and burning down whole city blocks. Who is a friend of Jesse Jackson? Barack Obama. Obama had this to say, quote, "What I'm opposed to is the attempt by political hacks like Karl Rove to distract us from a raise in the uninsured." Well, sure, there's lots of uninsured people in America. A rise in the poverty state? Yes, it's getting worse. We know that. Welfare state always sends people into depravity. A drop in the median income? Yes, the transfer of businesses to other countries always drops the income. To distract us from corporate scandals and a stock market that has just gone through the worst month since the Great Depression. That's what I'm opposed to, end of quote. And some of those things are good to be opposed to. But when the very people you run with are causing it, why would you speak out against it if you weren't diverting attention in another direction? In July 2004, Mr. Obama delivered the keynote address at the Democratic National Convention in Boston. He used the speech to introduce himself to a national audience while he put down the Bush administration and the war in Iraq. In 2004, Mr. Obama ran for one of Illinois' 2 seats in the U.S. House, or Senate House. The Chicago Tribune endorsed Obama's campaign. But more importantly, the Tribune persuaded a Democratic appointed judge in California to open the sealed divorce records of Obama's Republican opponent. It revealed allegations, not absolute proof, of a sex scandal. They were allegations only by an ex-wife that did not want her ex-husband to get custody of their children. So the Republican resigned from office. Obama had no one to oppose him for the senatorship in Washington, D.C. The question is, even in his state senatorship, he had no one to oppose him there because of manipulations. Has he ever won a legitimate campaign? The answer is obviously no, when you have no opposition. Now, Mr. Obama had a $10 million campaign war chest from contributors. And with no Republican opponent, Obama had an open road to become the next U.S. Senator from Illinois. His friend and political supporter, the longtime Chicago alderwoman, was Dorothy Tillman. She helped him win the voting in Chicago's predominantly black wards. He also received valuable backing from both Jesse Jackson Sr. of the Rainbow Coalition and his son, Jesse Jackson Jr. But who is Dorothy Tillman? From 1984 to the year 2006, she was a Democrat. She was an alderwoman, which is a city council member in Chicago's largely black Third Ward. Well known for her revealed record of municipal corruption, her uncompromising views on race, and her professed anti-Americanism, she became a longtime friend of Barack Obama. During her time in elected politics, Tillman became the leading proponent, some of you may remember this hitting the national news, on giving reparations to the black race for slavery of their great-grandparents. She claimed that America remains, quote, one of the cruelest nations in the world when it comes to black folks, end of quote. She continued by saying that the United States owes blacks a debt. In 2004, Tillman was among the politicians whose backing of Obama's U.S. Senate run helped to get him all the black votes available in predominantly black wards in Chicago. In 2005, a Chicago area newspaper, Lakefront Outlook, launched an investigation into Tillman's financial books. They discovered a pattern of irregularities, financial irregularities, stemming from this particular tax-funded project. It was marred with tax violations. The investigators further found that Tillman was engaging in blatant nepotism, which is hiring family members to staff the financially troubled institution. As a direct result of all these revelations about her financial dealings and use of taxpayers' money, she lost in her 2006 bid for re-election. And yet, she was one of the biggest supporters and endorsers of Barack Obama when he ran for the senatorship of the United States. In March of 2005, Barack Obama joined forces with a web-based great grassroots political network called Move On. It seeks to use its fundraising clout to push the Democratic Party even further to the political left, which is socialism, in an effort to raise campaign funds for West Virginia Senator Robert Bidd's 2006 reelection bid. He also is affiliated, Mr. Robert Byrd, with many secret societies that have been used their influence for corruption in America. Obama wrote on this website, quote, "You and millions of others working through Move On have helped change the way politics work in this country," end of quote. In 2005, in a commencement address, Obama described the supposedly conservative philosophy of the government as one of the promises that it will give something back to everyone. It'll help to divvy up individual portions and give it back to the people in the form of tax breaks, handouts, and then encourage the people to buy their own health insurance, provide their own health plan, provide their own health care, their own education, and so on. And yet, when you look at it, those who took his speech and analyzed it and compared it said that it was nothing but social Darwinism, socialism. This is exactly what he is offering to the United States of America right now. In September of 2005, Mr. Obama spoke at a town meeting for the Congressional Black Caucus, which was identified by the FBI as a Communist Front organization. Normally, this particular organization say they are devoted to eradicating poverty. But he used it as an opportunity to bring out racial inequalities in America. Obama stopped short of suggesting that the federal government used Hurricane Katrina and the lack of getting the food to the people and supplies, that it was all because of racism. He stopped short of it, but he insinuated it. And those who analyzed his speech said that it was obvious that he himself came from a racist background and he is a racist. That's what that email from Kenya stated, that the American people did not know about him. But there is someone else that's very interesting that he has set up camp with. In December of 2006, Obama, who by then was contemplating a run for the presidency, met in New York with billionaire, yes, that's a B as in billion, financier George Soros. Soros had previously hosted a fundraiser for Obama during his 2004 campaign for the United States Senate. One of the most powerful men on earth, Soros is a hedge fund manager who has amassed a personal fortune estimated at $7.2 billion. His management company controls billions in investors' assets. Since 1979, Soros Foundation Network, and his flagship of all his networks is Open Society Institute. They have dispensed more than $5 billion to a multitude of organizations with the following objectives. Number one, promoting the view that America is institutionally an oppressive nation. A second objective, promoting the election of leftist political candidates throughout the United States. We all should know by now a leftist is a socialist communist. Another one of these objectives that he dispensed this $5 billion to opposes virtually everything, every law that the 9/11 national security measures brought forth. Of course, we know some of them have been taking away our freedoms. We reject them also. But they were told to engage in actively pursuing the promotion that these were illegal acts. They also, as an objective, were to depict American military actions wherever they were as unjust, unwarranted, and immoral. They also were to, as one of their objectives, promote open borders, mass immigration, and a watering down of current immigration laws. Another one of their objectives was to promote a drastic expansion of social welfare programs funded by ever-increasing taxes. Less money left in our pockets to pay for the welfare programs. And then another objective that all of these had in common was promoting social welfare benefits and amnesty for illegal aliens. But they have so many different organizations, you think this one is the bad organization, then they have another one over here and another one over here, and you can't keep up with all of them. Another objective was to defend suspected anti-American terrorists and their abettors, those who aided and abetting them. Another objective was to finance the recruitment and training of future activist leaders of the political left, socialist. Another one of their objectives that he spent $5 billion giving to was the advocating Americans unilateral, that means we, the United States only, disarm. That's what the communists have been wanting for years. W. Cleon Skousen said that in his book, The Naked Communists, one of their 45 objectives. It was to get the United States to disarm. Well, then if the rest of the world has military, how will we defend ourselves? It's obvious, we won't. But another one of those points and objectives was the opposition of the death penalty in all circumstances. Another objective was to promote socialized medicine in the United States. Another objective, promoting the tenets of radical environmentalism. Why would they do that? Radical environmentalism. The objective, according to Michael Berliner, who is an expert on this, says that their objective is not to clean up the air or clean the water, but to the demolition or destruction of the technological industrialized society. Put us back in the Stone Age. Then another objective was to bring American foreign policy under the control of the United Nations. Who is to be the head of the military of the United Nations by agreement at all times? A communist, Russian. Another one of their objectives was to promote racial and ethnic preferences in education and the business world alike. Now, on January 16th, 2007, Mr. Barack Obama announced the creation of a presidential exploratory committee. And within hours, Soros had already sent a contribution of the maximum allowed by law to kick him off the ground as a political candidate. Later that week, the New York Daily News reported that Soros would back Obama over Hillary Clinton. He had always backed Hillary Clinton, but the reason given was, when you look at their voting records, that he is the most socialized and communized voter in the Senate. Hillary was, until they scrutinized Obama's records. At the time Obama announced the formation of this exploratory committee, he had been in office and logged only 143 days' experience in the United States Senate. He apologized for it in a way, but he said that he had learned one thing, and that is that Washington had to change. The question is, change what? Change from corruption? That, I don't believe, is what he had in mind with his background. It was change to full-fledged socialism. How are you going to do that unless you have a dictator? Socialism is only a step toward communism. You have to have an ironclad leader, dictator, to bring about the socialistic program. And then it was supposed to gradually wither away the state, and then everybody would be happy and they would love each other and share with each other. Have you ever known anybody to do that? Human nature says, I want mine and I want yours. And that's why in no communist country it has ever succeeded. Michelle Obama quickly emerged as one of the new candidates' most vocal campaigners. In a February 2007 appearance with her husband on the television program 60 Minutes, Mrs. Obama implied that America's allegedly rampant white racism posed a threat to her husband. She explained that he might be killed going down to the gas station. Right on 60 Minutes.
Because the realities are that, as a black man, Barack can get shot going to the gas station.
In a January 2008 speech, Mrs. Obama depicted the United States as being a nation whose people are inclined to, and I'm quoting, hold to their own stereotypes and misconception, and to feel justified in their own ignorance, end of quote.
Folks don't like to change. They like feeling safe, whether it's right or wrong. People like their fear. Fear makes people feel comfortable. Because at least I know I'm afraid of something. Let's guard against the something I'm afraid of. We don't like being pushed outside of our comfort zones. You know it right here on this campus. Folks are sitting at different tables, y'all living in different dorms. I was there. Y'all not talking to each other. Taking advantage of the fact that you're in this diverse community. Because sometimes it's easier to hold on to your own stereotypes and misconceptions. It makes you feel justified in your ignorance. That's America.
Want to vote for him? Calling you ignorant? During a February 18th, 2008 speech in Milwaukee on behalf of her husband's campaign, she declared, and I'm quoting, "For the first time in my adult lifetime, I'm really proud of my country, not because Barack has done well, but because I think people are hungry for change," end of quote.
Let me tell you something. For the first time in my adult lifetime, I'm really proud of my country. And not just because Barack has done well, but because I think people are hungry for change.
In March 2008, a New Yorker profile quoted Mrs. Obama as saying in a speech that was made in South Carolina that the United States is just downright mean. And yet we have given more to foreign aid to other nations than any country in the history of the world. Yet we're downright mean. We give more to charitable organizations, whether it's churches or anything else, than any other nation on the face of the earth. But America is downright mean. But note some of the other supporters for Barack Obama. George Clooney, socialist. Rob Reiner, socialist. Arianna Huffington, socialist. Jesse Jackson, socialist. Michael Eric Dyson, socialist. Manning Marable, socialist. Cornel West, socialist. Barbara Weinstein, socialist. Lawrence Tribe, socialist. Hanoi Jane Fonda, socialist. Her former husband, Tom Hayden, socialist. Michael Ratner, socialist. Danny Glover of Hollywood, socialist. Outspoken socialist. Martin Sheen, socialist. Susan Sarandon, socialist. Spike Lee, socialist. Michael Moore, socialist. Mike Mayer, socialist. Bruce Springsteen, socialist. Ted Kennedy, socialist. John Kerry, socialist. John Conyers of Congress, socialist. Luis Gutierrez, socialist. Barbara Lee, socialist. Major Owens, socialist. Jan Schakowsky, socialist. Bobby Rush, former Black Panther and socialist. The whole ACORN organization, founded by Saul Alinsky's alliances, socialist. Without exception, all of his major contributors and supporters are socialist. In April of 2007, Obama addressed the activist Al Sharpton National Action Network. He told the crowd about his success as an Illinois lawmaker by making health insurance available to children and reducing the cost of prescription drugs for senior citizens. But who is Al Sharpton that he would stand up and speak on behalf of his National Action Network? Al Sharpton first came on the scene, and when Americans began to recognize who he was in November of 1987, he got involved in a girl by the name of Tawana Brayley. She was a black teenager who claimed that she had been abducted, raped, and smeared with feces by a mysterious gang of white men in Dutchess County, New York. Now, despite a complete absence of any credible evidence, and they went into every detail, they wanted to make sure that her story was correct, Sharpton continued making increasingly wild accusations that brought him on the national news, even though there was no evidence whatsoever. They couldn't find a clue that any of this had ever happened. And it culminated with him accusing the Dutchess County assistant prosecutor as being one of the white men that abducted her and raped her. It destroyed him, and they were found to be false charges. Did Sharpton say, "I'm sorry"? No. He went to the next headline. In 1991, He made news again when there was a series of anti-Semitic riots. That's anti-Jewish riots in Brooklyn's Crown Heights section, when a young black boy who had been killed in a car accident driven by a Hasidic Jew. Sharpton came on the scene, claimed without any knowledge whatsoever, without any proof, and even with a police report saying that this young man had not had a drop of liquor to drink, said that he was drunk. And it brought about racial hatred and tension in the whole neighborhood. He said that it was a social apartheid was happening there. And so and apartheid is race separation. And this angered the whole community. And without any proof whatsoever, he continued these wild claims until finally he sent notice that he wanted a showdown face to face with the Jewish leadership, and they would take care of the matter themselves. Of course, it didn't happen because the police were everywhere. But in 1995, Sharpton, along with such other notable people as Jeremiah Wright, Obama's 20-year minister, and Barack Obama, the three of them helped to organize for, and I put this in parentheses, minister, Louis Farrakhan, who was the head of the Nation of Islam's October 16th Million Man March. Now, why would Obama be out there organizing for Islamics? You figured out. In 1995, Sharpton led his National Action Network into the neighborhoods, Jewish neighborhoods of New York, Freddie's Fashion Mart. He began to make wild accusation against the Jews that they were taking over and robbing and stealing from the black community. It ended up with somebody walking in and gunning down 4 of the employees, white customers and employees of the business. And then someone set fire to the business that killed 7 Hispanic workers. He was standing there, and it was all going on under the watchful, approving eye of Mr. Sharpton. In April 2007, Obama addressed Sharpton's National Action Network. Once again, after these events had happened, 12 years later, in March 2008, Sharpton, who was a strong supporter of Obama, stated that he had become accustomed to speaking to him on a regular basis, 2 to 3 times a week. And the last part that I want to mention today in brief is the current leader of the Nation of Islam. Remember, Obama was right there helping to organize this million-man march on Washington. The current leader of the Nation of Islam is Louis Farrakhan. He was born Louis Eugene Walcott on May 11th, 1933 in Roxbury, Massachusetts, which was a suburb of Boston. He moved on to Chicago and was introduced to the Nation of Islam. Now, Mr. Farrakhan had a falling out with Malcolm X because Malcolm X found that the leader, Elijah Muhammad, of the Nation of Islam had impregnated several teenage girls who were working as secretaries, and he thought it was wrong. And so Mr. Farrakhan accused Malcolm X of being a traitor. And he said, such a man is worthy of death. 10 weeks later, February 21st, 1965, Malcolm X was killed in Harlem's Audubon Ballroom by 3 gunmen associated with the Nation of Islam. Now, looking back, and as a reminder, in 1995, along with Jeremiah Wright and Barack Obama, they helped Louis Farrakhan in his organization of a Million Man March, October 16th. Who you associate with tells you something about your character. Obama. I only have one question about him as I close. With all this information about the background in part 1 and part 2 of Barack Obama, instead of asking will the real Barack Obama stand up, I'm going to ask